Rajdeep Pachauda.
Thank you very much, Prem, and good morning to each and every one of you. When Prem asked me to speak on ethics in public life, I was a bit worried because, Indians tend to believe that everyone else is unethical but themselves. So, we look at the rest of the world and believe everyone is unethical, particularly those in the media. Those in the media will hold mutual fund owners and those in the mutual fund industry to be in some way unethical. We hold judges to be unethical, politicians to be unethical. We never look inwards. We are holier than thou. You're not supposed to point any fingers at us. We point fingers at the rest of the world. I remember a politician once telling me that, look at us. We get elected and re-elected every 5 years. We have to go back to the people. At least we are accountable to the people of India. Who are you journalists accountable to? And I thought about it. And I tried to sort of say, but we are accountable to our readers and our viewers. And he says, that doesn't matter. What really matters is, aap chunav lado. You should fight an election. Then you can tell me about ethics in public life. And this was said by a politician who had just come out of jail. So I didn't know what to say at the end of that. And the fact is he came out of jail and won the election. So he obviously believed that he had been vindicated. In fact, in the history of Indian politics, if you see over the years, those who usually go to jail when they come out tend to win elections. They don't lose elections. Mr. Lalu Prasad is the latest example. He was in jail last year, and just a few weeks ago in a by-election, surprised everyone by winning the maximum number of seats in Bihar. So the notion of ethics, which we discuss, I think has different parameters for different people. But I'm going to start by, all of us receive all kinds of emails in today's world. There are a lot of spam emails that come in. Some of them are absolute rubbish, but some of them make interesting points. And without naming some of the individuals in this email, because they might, if there is anyone there, today we live in a world where defamation can be filed. Indian defamation laws are slowly becoming stronger. I won't name all the names, but someone called Ravi Srivastava sent me an interesting email which made some very important factual points and which will perhaps tell you the kind of decline in ethical standards that has taken place. He says, what do you do when heads of institutions, constitutional authorities, CEOs of public sector banks, army generals, politicians are corrupt, biased, partisan? Who will save the nation if that happens? He gave the example of a former Chief Justice of India who gave a favorable order in a very important case involving a top corporate in the very last week of his retirement. He gave the order actually in the first week of May when he and retired in the second week. Immediately after that became chairman of the National Human Rights Commission, held a cabinet rank with a red beacon car. It is only of academic interest that later investigations have revealed that his immediate family members have benefited enormously from dubious land transactions. Then you have the BCCI chief, the head of the Indian Cricket Board, the most powerful cricket body, Mr. Srinivasan, who despite Supreme Court orders refuses to vacate the chair of the BCCI chairman, where the Indian team captain is an employee of a company which he controls. He also controls indirectly one of the most powerful IPL teams. There have been match-fixing scandals, betting scandals, but Srinivasan remains. As someone once told me, he's a good ad for Fevicol because he will never leave the chair. So you have someone like that. Then you have, more seriously also, recently an armed forces, one of our tribunals, the Armed Forces Tribunals, reversed the order that the former army chief, General V.K. Singh, who is now a minister in the government, he had personally ensured the court-martialing of another fellow general, General Rath, and as a result, the army tribunal reversed the order which the army chief had passed against General Rath. In fact, fined the army, Indian Army 1 lakh, saying you have filed a frivolous case against a senior army officer. The punishment has been annulled, but the man's reputation is finished, even as General Singh continues, not just as a former army chief now, but as a politician who actually won by the second largest margin after Narendra Modi in this election. So one army chief to settle scores with his own general, put a false case against him, continues as a minister in the government of India, even as that man's reputation. And this man came to see me a few years ago. He was in tears. He said, sir, I have served the Indian Army for 35 years. And today, because my army chief has decided to take me on, a false case has been planted against me. The other example, Ranjit Sinha, the director of the CBI, who the more you read of, the more interesting he is. Because he is beating people who are accused in all the cases again. The only people whom he see, if you see his register, he doesn't seem to meet fellow officers. He only seems to meet the other side. He doesn't meet the prosecutors. He meets the accused. In fact, he has met some of them 50 to 90 times in a month. Some of them more than twice in a day. They are 2G scam accused, coal scam accused, ministers, MPs of ruling and opposition parties who are apparently being investigated. He has 7 cooks, 22 domestic servants, and 3 persons who are keeping an account of his visitors. In fact, one of his fellow officers, one of the younger, brighter officers told me, हम तो उनको पहले से जानते थे, उनका नाम हमने रखा है कालू कलंदर. Because we know that he is involved in black deeds. And apparently he has now acquired more land than most people can imagine, just as a CBI director. Now this is the country's highest police officer. If the country's highest police officer in India is someone whom his own junior officers believe is corrupt and can do little about it, what are we to say about ethics in public life? You had a more recent case which you might identify with even more directly, being in the mutual fund industry or in the financial sector. The Syndicate Bank, chairman and managing director, S.K. Jain, caught red-handed accepting bribes for extending loans to corporates, in this case Bhushan Steel, beyond limit with the help of half a dozen middlemen. I'm sure you know of many such bank chairmen as well, who are probably involved in this. This person was caught with his hand in the till, but I'm sure there are many other examples in this country, because the manner in which PSU bank chairmen are employed in this country is well known. Today, to be a PSU bank chairman is not entirely on merit. It also depends on your connections and your contacts and which government is in power. The Medical Council of India chairman, Ketan Desai, was caught and arrested because he was taking money for granting permission to set up a medical college, for accreditation of medical colleges. That happened 4 years ago. Just a few months ago, there was a small news item. Ketan Desai makes a comeback to MCI. He hasn't been cleared yet, but he has made his comeback. He is from Gujarat now, and Gujarat runs the country. So if you are from Gujarat and you have connections, then even if your leader is honest, because your leader says na khane dunga, na khaunga, na khane dunga, I will not bribe, nor will I allow anyone else to bribe. But in his home state, I would like to know who is the politician or who is the bureaucrat who ensured that Dr. Ketan Desai, who has still not been cleared in the Medical Council of India scam, has made a comeback 4 years later into the same Medical Council of India. All his proxies are back. All those who are being investigated in the previous UPA government are all slowly back in the MCI. So much for na khane dunga, na khaunga, na khane dunga. I believe that the Prime Minister is honest. But honesty is also relative. If the people around you are dishonest, what are you going to do? One of his ministers today, the joke that goes on in Delhi is that if you are a road contractor, life has changed, particularly from Maharashtra. If you are a road contractor from Maharashtra, suddenly all kinds of contracts are being given to you. Contracts that were stalled in the last 24 months. Now, as usual in Delhi, gossip, has to be confirmed with evidence. But the fact is that there are questions that can be raised about ministers as well. Another interesting example that has been given is the censor board chief. The censor board chief, Rakesh Kumar, was caught red-handed for accepting bribes for clearing certificates to films. So now we have reached the stage where even the censor board CEO, I thought the censor board CEO is not, then I realized that clearing a film to give a UA certificate or A certificate is very valuable apparently. So the value of that has been registered. Now we can ask, who is the culprit there? Whose ethics are we going to look at? The bribe giver or the bribe taker? Who should we be punishing? Should we be punishing the CEO or the person, the filmmaker, who has decided at all costs I want my film to get a UA certificate? So sometimes when we raise ethics, and we raise the issue of ethics, and we look at the person who is taking the bribe, we have to ask ourselves, what about the bribe giver? Should he be treated at the same level as the person who takes the bribe? And these are questions that we need to answer, because otherwise the ethical standard that we expect of others will also be expected of us. I think that's increasingly important. A former Chief Justice of India, Sathasivam, has been appointed, some would say rewarded, as Governor of Kerala, less than 4 months after he has retired as the governor. Now he is the same person who looked at the case of the second most powerful person in India today, Amit Shah, and ensured that Amit Shah was effectively out of the loop in terms of a fake encounter case. So Mr. Sadasivam, somewhere, or so will be the perception, has ensured a quid pro quo. He has got a nice life. Thiruvananthapuram is a very nice place to be a governor. In fact, the governor's office is the best place. We are now a country where former CBI directors, former army chiefs, top bureaucrats are all becoming governors within a few months of their retirement. And then you have to ask yourself whether, when even in the last few months, all I am angling for is what is my post-retirement benefit. Every judge today in his last few months, or several judges, we shouldn't say every judge, but several judges in the last few months of before their retirement are angling, which commission can I become the head of? Can I become competition commission head? Can I look at monopolies and restrictive trade practices so that I can keep my lal batti and my house? And these are judges. So the top police officer of the country is under the scanner. The Chief Justice of India is under the scanner. And you've got ministers who are under the scanner, because an ADR report says almost 1/3 of our legislators have some kind of serious crimes and criminal cases against them. I won't name the other individual here, but there is a petroleum minister who many believe was less than honest and was believed to be a conduit, basically. He was believed to be acting as a proxy for a business house. I mean, he was not really the petroleum minister. He was the petroleum minister for that company, not for himself, not for the government of India. I mean, he was a good example of what is described sometimes as crony capitalism. Now, he was tweaking policies. Every time you tweak policies, billions of dollars can be made. You see, there are two kinds of criminals who operate in our politics today, in public life. One is the blue-collar criminal. I'll give you the example of, there is a guy called Mohammad Shahabuddin. He has done rape, dacoity, all kinds of things. He was a 4 or 5 time MLA in Bihar. I remember once sitting with Lalu Prasad in Bihar and asking him, "Aap ye Shahabuddin ko ticket kyun dete? Why do you give him an election ticket time after time when you know he's involved in kidnapping, rape, murder?" He said, "नहीं, ऐसा है कि आप लोग जो है ना, आप लोग elite लोग हैं. आप elite लोगों को लगता है कि क्राइम केवल किडनैपिंग, डेकोइटी में होता है. जब आप लोग पैसा बनाते हैं वो क्राइम नहीं होता है. लेकिन जब हमारा आदमी छोटे घर से आके ये अपना धंधा करता है तो आप उसको क्रिमिनल करते हैं." So I tried to understand the logic of it. The logic was essentially that if you are a blue-collared criminal involved in rape, crime, dacoity, then in some way, you are a person who has come from some small town of Bihar, you must be excused. But when I really think of it, there are white-collar criminals as well. In the previous UPA government, one of the most corrupt ministers was also one of the wealthiest ministers in his personal life. In fact, he had bought a villa in France. I am now told he has an island in Thailand. And he has not been touched. In all these, his name has never come in this entire process. The CAG, the former CAG has revealed in his book, for example, and I won't name names, but the fact is he has asked a very pertinent question. Why is it that when Air India was supposed to hire only 28 new aircraft, why did Air India hire 60 new aircraft? Who is going to compensate? And those same aircraft have been sold now. And the loss to the exchequer, who is going to compensate for that? It's a simple question. UPA government is gone now. CAG is also gone. Who's going to ask the question? So I think, the white collar, the so-called more sophisticated people,
get away. Shahabuddin won't get away. Good. Shahabuddin is in jail now for the last 10 years. I think the law is getting tougher against blue-collar criminals. My belief is the law still against white-collar criminals.